Started with the agenda for the BoCC, which is a draft agenda at this point in time, but we'll go through it. And so we'll start off with the call the meeting in order at 2 o'clock this afternoon, and then ask Commissioner Edwards to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And by after that, we'll approve the agenda if there's any modifications, and the board meeting minutes for June 5th, 2018. We do have one presentation. It's from the Public Defense Department, and it's introduction of a new employee. And I think that is Genevieve Alaya.
I think she goes by Jeannie.
Jeannie, yeah,
Jeannie Ayala.
Sure.
And Jose Vargas, who is the Public Defense Fiscal Manager, will be introducing her as a new employee.
Fantastic.
That's a good practice we have been implementing just for you, as the board don't have the opportunity to get to know new employees, and this is a great opportunity also for the public to see new employees as well.
Yep. Alrighty, from that, it's great. It's great to have that. That's been a long time coming as far as the new fiscal manager number 2 assistant there. So, okay, so opportunity for the public to address the board. Is there anything that's
I don't have anything that perhaps might be coming, but.
Alrighty, and then the county manager's update.
Yeah, I don't have any specific follow-ups from any comments that you have received in the last couple of weeks. However, I'm going to be bringing some of the briefings that you heard over the last week, and perhaps some of the actions and decisions that you have made in the past week as well. And that is an attempt to inform the public that it's not just the meetings that you have today,
no,
and the agenda review that you have today, but during the week you have a lot of briefings and you make several decisions along the way. So I will do so in my report this afternoon.
Alrighty. Any questions about that?
No.
Alrighty. So we're going to move into the consent items. We have 2 items, A and B. And the first one is from Human Resources, approved collective bargaining agreement. HR and Deborah Bergman has been able to get a contract with the Deputy Sheriff's Association Administrative Staff, Support Staff. That's good news. This contract was from January 2018 through December 31st, 2019. And I believe within that context includes a 2% cost of living increase, which is already included in the budget for 2018. Fantastic. Any questions?
It's a long time coming.
That's a long time coming. It's been a lot of work. She is absolutely phenomenal. Debbie is.
Yeah, she is.
Okay, so we're going to B, which is the Auditor's Financial Services, and we have Judy Ross, who's now the point of contact.
Yeah, this is your weekly update of approving the voucher list.
Okay, so we're going to move into department items, which is item number 4, Central Services. This is a real estate broker services contract extension, and Martin Casey, Central Services, is the proponent.
Yeah, you reviewed this item last week, and the proposal is to exercise a clause in the existing agreement that we have with Kidder Matthews, where they provide real estate brokerage services. As you may recall, Kidder Matthews helped us in surplusing and selling a couple of buildings, county buildings in the past. And this particular amendment just extend their services through July 31st, 2021. It does not include any financial components of this amendment, but certainly it will be great to have their expertise available if we need it in the next couple of years, particularly when moving into the courthouse civic center project. I believe last week Commissioner Edwards highlighted how the bidding process and the selection occurred. We went through a normal request for proposals a couple of years ago, I believe. And as a result of that, Kidder Matthews was selected, and we entered into an agreement, a contract. Within that contract had a clause to extend the existing contract, which is allowed by law. And that's what we are requesting for you to allow Martin Casey, the Central Services Director, to exercise that clause of that agreement.
Question? Comment?
Nope.
Nope. We're good with that. Okay, so 4B, which is approved purchase of replacement storage
Access Network Array, otherwise known as SAN.
Yeah, you also reviewed this item last week, and this is a normal of replacement schedule of IT equipment. In this particular case, the current servers have reached the useful life, and we're in the process of updating that type of equipment for the cost of $158,324.62. This is already included in the current budget, and is coming from the IT indirect rates. No changes to the current budget. And the Director of Central Services is here if you want to ask any questions.
No. Got you.
Okay, I think we're good with 4B, so let's move on to 5, which is the Public Health and Social Services. The title of it's the Pierce County Subrecipient Agreement.
Yeah, there is an overlap in terms of the area related to the Thurston County Shellfish Protection District, which encompasses portions of Pierce County. In this particular agreement, what it does is Pierce County contributes $109,600 to Thurston County to provide and conduct pollution identification and correction work within that district. This agreement goes from April 1st, 2017 through April 31st, 2018.
Any questions? We're good. 5, we're on to 6. It's a department item, Public Works. This is the approval of 2017-2019 Local Solid Waste Financial Assistance Agreement between the Department of Ecology and Department Public Works Solid Waste Division.
This is a biennial grant. The Public Works Solid Waste Division receives on a yearly, every 2 years. This grant used to be known as the CPG grant, which is the Coordinated Pollution Grant, and now they have changed it to Local Solid Waste Financial Assistance, an acronym of LSWEA. And again, this agreement is between the Department of Ecology at the state and the Public Works Solid Waste for a total cost of $75,000, and it will last from 2017 to 2018. There is a match associated with this grant. Out of the $75,000, $56,250 comes from the state, and $18,750 comes from the local match, which is from the tipping fees at solid waste. And the intent of this grant is to conduct a solid waste management plan, and again from 2017 to through 2019.
Any questions about that?
No, sir.
All righty. Number 6 is good. We're going to move on to number 7, which is the Community Planning and Economic Development Department. This is to approve an ordinance amending Thurston County Code Enforcement Ordinance Title 26.
Yeah, this has been a long time coming, Commissioners, as you have been very engaged on some of the changes to Title 26 related to code enforcement. And you held a public hearing on June 5th, 2018, and you also had a follow-up meeting on June 7th, 2018, where you review all the 9 comments that you received both in writing as well as a public testimony. And at this point, you directed staff to go ahead and give you a formal proposal for you to take an action and implement those changes.
Comment?
Nope, I'm ready.
Was there an action we were going to take to help with the one, I'll say the gentleman, he had a request, and I don't know if we were able to oblige that.
Thank you. One of the public testimony was this gentleman was requesting to see if we can develop somewhat of a roadmap, as to how the process goes of code enforcement. On June 7th, last week, we had a discussion in terms of perhaps that roadmap doesn't belong in the code, but we're going to be developing a one-page roadmap that will make it available both online as well as here in the county to help citizens navigate through that process.
The roadmap's the appendices.
Yeah, it's some sort of a visual aid as to how the Title 26 should work. So that's how the proposal is coming for you in front of you.
That was a good idea.
But thank you for reminding me on that.
All righty. So next would be number 8, but that's the Commissioners check-in, so to speak. Okay, that takes us into, is there any questions or comments on today's June 12th, 2018 agenda? No?
Not for me, no.
No. Okay, you're going to move on to, next item on our agenda is the BoCC draft agenda for June 19th. We'll do a preview of that real quick and then move into the Board of Health. So for June 19th, call the meeting to order and ask Commissioner Hutchins to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, approve any agenda at that time and any modifications, and the board meeting minutes for June 12th, 2018. We do have one presentation, which is from Emergency Services, the paramedic retirement recognition, and Mr. Kirk Harding will be here, and he'll
Yes, he will introduce Mr. Don Bowman.
Bowman, yeah.
He's a paramedic with the Lacey Fire District 3. He has a long history, 4 years of service, which began in 1978, and he has done just about everything related to that part of the business. Medic 1 will be presented with a certificate on that day, and Kurt Harding will also have the opportunity to introduce to the board this gentleman.
Any comments? So I heard you say that Medic 1 will be presented with a certificate, but Medic 1 is the organization. Is there something of a certificate of appreciation for Mr. Bowen?
We can probably draft one
Yeah,
so
just
the commissioners can do that.
from
Yeah,
HR or
we'll
something like
work
that,
on
yeah.
that. Thank you.
Yeah. You think so?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know the background, and I have to get that from Kurt. But
Kurt's got it all.
sure. All righty. So the next item we have is the opportunity for the public to address the board on June 19th, and I don't know if there's anything you can see here in your crystal ball, if there's anything.
So if you receive some testimony today, and if there is a need for me to follow up, I will do so next week.
Fantastic.
And we're getting closer to the fireworks decision.
Yes.
Is that the end, is that like the 20th or 20-something?
It's on the 27th of June,
27?
and I keep looking at the forecast and playing my
Getting small.
weather forecaster, and it appears the conditions are favorable for not to implement that.
Not to implement.
Not to
implement
ban.
that. No. However, I'm going to be working with Kurt Harding as well as the Fire Marshal, Josh Cummins, and just making sure that maybe next week I can provide you a report. Hopefully we can get information in terms of how many businesses have applied to sell fireworks in unincorporated Thurston County, and we'll give you an updated report on the weather conditions as we nearing close to the June 27th deadline.
And businesses includes nonprofits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's incumbent.
And every single business needs to apply for a permit in order to sell fireworks.
Right. And for the nonprofits, that's like, for many of them, that's their once-a-year biggest fundraiser to keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
Some of them are, yeah.
So that's why we have to be, at least have to be extremely diligent
Yes.
leading to that point, that decision point.
All righty. Well, just leads us into the county manager's update. I didn't know if anything you had to add on June 19th.
Yeah, on June 19th, I will bring back that information.
Okay.
Just to keep you posted.
So I'm going to move into item number 3, which is the consent items. We have A through D, and the first one is execute license indemnity agreement for owner and agreement number 18106687. Is this Kevin Hughes?
Yeah, and you approve a similar license and indemnity agreement last week, and this is for another gentleman, to Mr. Kevin and Jill Campbell. They're asking to bore under the Sumner Lake Shore Road to put a septic line in the Sumner Lake area. This is a common practice. As you may recall, last week I reported to the board the difference between a license and indemnity agreement versus a franchise agreement is the same. We allow any utilities to be placed in the county's right of way. The difference between one and the other is the license and indemnity agreement is given to an individual, and a franchise agreement is given to an organization, a business.
Any questions, comment on that so far?
No, it's fine.
All right, item B, which is emergency services, a resolution adopting the classification of Medic 1 purchasing specialist and reclassification of a position.
This is a proposal in front of the commissioners to reclassify an administrative assistant 1 to a medic 1 purchasing specialist. The impact on the budget goes from $4,860 to $5,103 a month. That will be $243 a month, with just about 5% increase. And this will be covered under the current medic 1 budget.
Any comments, questions?
No.
Budget-wise?
It does, at least at some point, cost us, with less return, with less turn back money.
But I agree. I agree. If you're looking from the budget point of view, but also looking from the business needs point of view, that is something that we need to continue to assess and what the directors see the best makeup of those positions are in order to be effective in delivering the services.
And to
So,
be competitive.
absolutely.
All right. So that puts us at, did you have anything?
No, I don't.
Okay, good, sure. Item number C, so it's just the auditor. This is a resolution classified a position.
This is the position that currently Darren Bennett is holding. And the proposal before, last week, you reviewed this proposal. They were in the process of changing just the specifications of the job. I knew that it was another effort just to look globally, do a market analysis to any like jurisdictions in the region, how much they pay a similar position. So they have done that, and they checked with Clark County, Kitsap County, Snohomish County, Whatcom County, City of Olympia, City of Lacey, and City of Tumwater.
Oh, my gosh.
So which a maximum average of this position pays about $10,869 a month. So the proposal before you is to change the specifications of the position as well as adjusting the salary from $9,329 to $10,459. The $10,459 is below the average, but I think it's adequate to this particular position. That is an increase of $1,130 a month, or just about 12%. And the auditor's office is going to be absorbing that increase in 2018.
Okay.
And again, going back to the previous conversation, trying to be competitive in the market and making sure that we not just keep qualified individuals, but also we could attract qualified individuals as we go through the recruitment process.
Any comments or questions? You're good with it? You got any questions, comments? Speak now.
So it's absorbed in her budget or in the auditor's budget for the rest of this year,
Until next.
but till next year.
So what this is doing, if I understand it, is resetting the salary range. Would not necessarily be paying at the top of the range for the new person that they hire.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
Right.
and I believe Darren was
So that's the
up or
cap.
close to the top of the
Yeah.
range. So, actually, she may hire someone for less. She might for more, and if
Yeah.
it's more, then she'll have to absorb. But
Okay.
That's a good clarification. Thank
So it's
you.
a good, it's a cap then, good, okay, I'm fine with that, thank you.
All right. So now we're at item D, which is the auditor's financial services, the weekly or monthly.
Yeah, that's your weekly approval of the voucher list.
Okay. So we're going to move.
I do have just one comment.
Sure.
Because we have a new person going to be submitting, could you make a little extra effort, maybe both you and Robin, about reviewing that, make sure we're up to speed when that comes before us for a signature? Are you going to have, this is a new person making the submission, right? Darren used to do it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. For the voucher list?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
just, make sure everything's in place. All the squares are checked off and the blocks are filled in.
Is Judy a new employee? I don't think so. No, I didn't think so.
Well, no, but it's a new activity.
As a new person doing this, yeah, we'll ensure that,
That's all.
yeah.
Once you have signed, you approved it and signed it, this is the person that I send it back to, is Judy Ross. So she, even though Darren's name has been on my agenda, when I send the voucher list back, I send it directly to her. I don't know what she does with it, but just so you know.
But what the commissioners are requesting for me to review prior for them taking approval, which I'll do that.
Yeah, that's all.
Oh, sorry.
That's all you're looking for is a final
Yeah,
set of
just-
eyes on it?
Yeah, well, before we get it, you know, just to make sure everything's
Okay.
right. That's all.
Now I get it on Fridays.
How long did Darren do this?
Oh my goodness, he's been in the county for 11 years, I believe, 11, 12 years.
Oh my gosh, what a nice guy.
Darren didn't prepare the voucher list.
He oversaw
His
that.
staff prepared
Sure,
them,
but-
and they're
but-
not leaving,
Yeah, and he overlooked it, I'm sure.
sure.
I'm gonna
It's
miss
a-
him.
It's a dump from the system, but we should be reviewing it.
Yeah.
All right. So it does take us into department items. This is item number 4, the Public Works. And this is a resolution to apply for a grant from the Fish Barrier Removal Board for replacement of 4 fish barrier culverts on the Chehalis Western Trail and Latigo St. Street Southeast and Spurgeon Creek Crossing.
Yeah, and this particular grant application is through the RCO, the Recreation and Conservation Office,
Oh,
which
great.
requires a formal action by the commissioners
Wow.
before the department can submit for a grant.
Mhm.
This grant is for $2 million, and as you mentioned, it's going to be to replace 4 fish barrier culverts. And I'd like to take you back, and I think Commissioner Edwards was mentioning last week when you approved other culverts as to how the REIT money can serve as a leverage to secure additional grant money. In this particular case, staff from Public Works used the REIT to do the planning and to do some engineering. So that's at the stage for those 2 culverts to be a little more competitive into this grant. And the grant itself is going to be for finalizing the engineering as well as the construction of those 4 culverts.
Any problem?
No, good.
Comments? Any comments?
That's what I'm
Nope,
looking for.
I like it.
All righty. He likes it. Number 5, which is public defense. This is the juvenile client services contract for Thurston County Juvenile.
Yeah, this is a contract between the Thurston County Public Defense and the Washington State Office of Public Defense to execute a juvenile client services contract for $134,628. It is related to cases appointed by juvenile court as well as the state's Office of Public Defense, the state's courts, I'm sorry. And this is for the years of, is 2 parts of this agreement. One is $56,752. They will go from July 2018 to December 2018. And $56,868 that will go from January 19 to June 2019. And again, it's just to cover the services for the Office of Public Defense.
Is this what budget or what are we talking about here? Has this been approved already in the budget? Or is this something?
This is a grant that we received from the state as a new revenue, and since they're covering staff.
So not going to affect the budget?
No, I don't believe so. No.
Okay.
All righty. So that makes it, takes us to number 6.
Sorry.
That's Public Health and Social Services. This is approval of the amendment number 2, Washington State Department of Health 2018-2020 consolidated contract.
Yes, this is an amendment number 2 to increase the current agreement that we have for the consolidated contract to add an additional $268,092 for a total of $966,556. And the current contract goes from January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018. Let me get my notes and I'll give you the programs in which those are intended to do. So this amendment will amend the statements of work for the childhood lead poisoning program, the maternal and child health block grant, the National Estuary Program, NEP, the SSI On-Site Sewage Management Office of Emergency Preparedness and Response, Tobacco and Vapor Product Prevention Control, and Infectious Disease Prevention Section. I got it.
I said it.
It's complicated.
It's additional money to support those programs.
Okay.
Bottom line up front.
Have we
And Gary is
supported,
here,
have we supported those programs in the past?
I don't know if you're,
Have we supported those programs in the past?
yeah, it's
Okay.
an ongoing program.
Okay,
And this is an amendment to an existing contract that includes those programs.
all right.
You have any questions? All right, so that's good with public health and social services. The next one is item number 7, which is the commissioners and county managers items. That's an amend a interlocal agreement between Thurston County, Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization for treatment sales tax funds.
Yeah, I have some questions on this, and I left a voicemail to Carrie Henn. So this is, I believe, an increase on the contributions for the treatment sales tax to the behavioral health organization for up to $1,784,885. There is a typo in here. There is not an assistant county
I was
commissioner.
just going to ask you, who's that?
But also I have a question as to why the Director of Public Health and Social Services is not the signature of this agreement. So I'll need to circle back with Carrie on that one.
So this is on hold.
I'll clarify those questions when you review this agenda item next Tuesday morning.
Okay, so we'll put that on hold to get back. So item number 7B, still in the commissioners and county managers items. Item B is a bid award and sign the 2017-2018 agreement for the official county newspaper.
Yeah, this is, as you can see, is blank because you have not decided as to what will be the official newspaper. And La Bonita has some information to share with you as a result of the bidding process that we just went through.
We had 2 call for sale bids, one from the Nisqually Valley News and one from the Olympian. On the numbers and calculation, the Nisqually Valley News has 2,110 on their circulation of citizens who actually pay to receive the newspaper. And their price per line is $15. And doing the calculation, that means each customer is paying approximately 7/10 of a cent. The Olympian and the Nisqually Valley News is a weekly paper publishing on Friday only. The Olympian circulation is $17,301. Price per line is $30.80. And their cost analysis is 1/10 of a cent per customer. And they're a daily paper. The Nisqually Valley News, for getting your articles in their paper on Friday, you have to have it by Tuesday at noon. The Olympian is Monday through Thursday, you need to have it in by noon each day. If you're going to have something on the weekend, it has to be in the paper by noon on a Thursday, and they'll give you leeway on a Friday.
So based on the information, again, just to recap, although the Olympian has a $30 per line, but if you divide that again by the coverage they have in the days in which they published, they have a 1/10 of a cent cost per line, in a way. And the Nisqually Valley News, although on the surface they appears to be less expensive, $15 per line, but the coverage is less. If you divide that by the coverage, then it's more expensive. So the recommendation from the start at this point for you to support going with the Olympian.
Any thoughts for you?
I have several thoughts, but it's just opinion. And so as I recall, we've had this discussion before, and it's going to benefit not only the county and the citizenry, but also our staff considerably by going with the Olympian because of the convenience of daily reporting rather than weekly reporting, and I reluctantly support that, the Olympian. Because it's my opinion, the media is to serve the governed, not the governors, and I'm not sure they meet that standard, in my opinion. But I will go with the Olympian.
Olympian.
So next week, when you review this agenda item, we'll include the Olympian as the...
Sure. All righty. Item C, which is the on-call consultant services for courthouse and civic center planning phase, including comprehensive
Yeah, this is a-
comparative feasibility.
This is a
study.
request from the, to the board to issue a request for qualifications to secure a no-call professional consulting services for the courthouse and civic center project. As you may recall, we have the group, which includes a lot of stakeholders, internal to the county as well as external. The City of Olympia has narrowed down to 3 potential site locations, including the existing courthouse. And the next step is to go with a little more detailed feasibility study by a consultant, and the result of that will give you additional, more detailed information for the board to make a decision as to where the new potential courthouse will be located, Civic Center. And again, this is the first step, and we'll have to come back. We'll have to come back to the board when the bidding process will be completed and provide a recommendation to enter into a contract with a selected firm.
For consulting for the 3 sites of the courthouse. Just RFQ right now, that's all. Any comments from your end? RFQing, we're just doing the Q, we're not doing the
just
P.
in the queue, yeah.
No Ps right now. All right. We're good with that. So on June 12th, we also have 2 public hearings. One's at 3 o'clock.
Yeah,
The
that's
other one's at 4:30. So at the 3 o'clock one, Commissioners, is the public hearing to adopt the budget number 6.
the budget amendment number 6. Yes, and at 4:30, there is a public hearing where you will hear testimony related to potential changes on the speed limits
Speed
on
limits
some
also at 4:30, okay?
on some county roads.
Sure. Any questions about the 3 o'clock public hearing so far? No? And how about the public hearing for the Public Works, the speed limit change scheduling? Any questions or comments on that? I think Bernie's name has 2 S's in it.
Thank you.
Good eye. Obviously, she didn't submit it.
Or missed decisions. Yeah.
Yeah.
All righty. I think that brings us to a point where is there any kind of comments or questions from anybody in the room about June 19th as we look forward? No. We're going to move on to the Board of Health, and I think Shelley's going to call in. Is that correct? Are you going to call her?
Yeah, she's available, and I will call her if you like.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you 1 minute to get her on the phone. This is going to be a good Board of Health. It's got a lot of good stuff in it. She's always on the phone with somebody else. It's horrible.
I've seen the
That sounds better.
Yeah, I was wondering. Like,
opioid resolution, but I haven't seen the homeless one.
Good morning, Shelley. Have you on the speakerphone? And we're ready to start reviewing the Board of Health agenda. So I will put on the middle of the table, and I know that for the public who is watching this video stream may not be able to catch what you're saying, but I'm going to try to put the microphone next to my phone and go from there.
Okay, sounds great.
Can you hear us okay?
Okay, so Shelley, this is the Board of Health for June 14th at 10 o'clock, I see. Yep, 10 o'clock. And so I'll call the meeting to order, and then we'll make a motion to approve the agenda with any modifications. And then item number 2, we'll have the opportunity for the public to address the board. And I don't know if there's any issues that you might know of now. Just looking around so we can... I don't think there are, but okay. So item number 3, which we'll move into department items. The first one is the tobacco and vapor product prevention in Thurston County and beyond. And I have here Kateri Wimsett, Chris Hawkins, and I didn't know if there's been any change from the last time we talked, Shelley, as far as just a brief overview and awareness piece there. Is that still the case?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And then, but there's like 2 or 3 slides, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and then Romero has it.
For clarification, this is just informational to the Board of Health. As we moving forward and changing a policy, that will be a decision the Board of County Commissioners will have to take. So there will be yet another presentation when you consider changing the policy. And at that point, I may ask you, will you consider a public hearing as well before you change the policy?
Sure.
More to come.
Okay, any questions, comments on item number 3, tobacco and vapor product?
Nope.
Not. We're going to move into item number 4, which is the approval of the aquatic nuisance weed control prescription for parrot. And I have Art down here and Patrick Soderberg and Tim Wilson. And this is kind of one of the latest, just as we did last time, for one of the, I forget which lake, or several lakes in mind if we need to, right?
Chehalis River.
That is correct. That's
Yes.
to implement in a specific, this is for the parrot feather weed. And this is also, we receive a grant to do harvesting along the Chehalis River. And this prescription really is specific to address this particular weed.
But it was my understanding when we had the work session that if needed, if it shows up in one of the lakes, we could use it.
Absolutely.
That's
so,
what I was alluding to,
So
yeah.
when you approve a prescription, is to deal with a specific species. You don't approve a prescription to a specific location. So if a species comes up in a different location, the staff has the tools to address that.
Any comments, Judge?
None on that, no.
Anything to follow up with that, Shelley?
No, that's all correct.
Okay, and do they have a slideshow? I'm just curious. Is there a slideshow that they're presenting or not? It's okay if they don't, I'm just curious.
I'm just trying to, I don't believe so. I think they just have a handout.
Okay. We'll roll with
Would
that.
you like us to have that projected? Okay.
No, just the whole parrot feather thing as far as a health issue, but it's okay this time, it's good.
We can ask the staff just because the name sometimes of those noxious weeds doesn't, at least for me, doesn't mean much.
Yeah.
I think having a picture of this weed will be
That's
helpful.
kind of what I was alluding to,
Yeah.
but I wasn't going to make a deal out of it.
So we'll work with staff to at least bring a picture of the
Pictorial.
weed.
Is that all right, Shelley?
Oh yes, of course. We'll get that.
For people who need pictorials like me, so.
So parrot feather doesn't sound nasty, but apparently it's a noxious weed.
Okay.
You're right.
Item number 5, and this is the resolution addressing the opioid epidemic and declare a public health crisis. And you're doing this. You want to give us just a little bit of background and intent on this, Shelley?
Sure. Yes, you had previously requested that we work on this resolution, and so we have done that, drafted a resolution for you to consider declaring the opioid epidemic a public health crisis, and I believe you have that there with you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have about any of the specific language.
Have you read it?
No, I haven't.
The opioid one.
It looks like this. It's
No,
one
it's like
page.
this.
Oh, marked
Opioid?
up, right?
Yeah, marked up.
Okay. We do have some revisions?
Okay.
or clarifications, perhaps even.
You want to ask clarifications now?
Yeah, if it's my go, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Commissioner Hutchins, Shelley.
Yeah, I'm looking at 1, 2, the whereas. This is number 1, 2, 3, fourth whereas.
Okay.
The opioid epidemic affects our communities, devastates families, and overwhelms our healthcare, social services, law enforcement, and judicial systems. I believe that to be true, but do we have evidence or proof of that?
We could, and certainly include some more specific data about that.
And I'm not looking so much to add. Because I have to read this, I think. I'm not looking at adding verbiage, but as long as if somebody asks, well, yeah, but how's that justified? How do you justify that? Do we have the capability, or do we have that evidence or that proof that that's a true statement?
That it overwhelms those systems.
Yes.
I think we could definitely provide data that that shows how much of a problem that it is. But maybe you want to consider striking that, or do you want to change the word about overwhelming?
That's not the point.
Do you want more specific
that's
data?
not the issue. I just want to be defensible. We're saying, whereas this is a truth, I want to be able to say, yeah, it is a truth, and here's why. And absent mandatory reporting, I don't think we have all the information yet.
If I may?
Yes, sir.
Putting some numbers to this statement is going to be extremely complicated.
And I'm not looking for that.
And I think making the statement, and at least from my point of view, is all around us. It is all around us that certainly affects our communities. It is not just the communities of Thurston County and Washington State, but across the nation. Where it devastates families, absolutely, because as soon as an individual is with the opioid addiction, their families are affected in so many different ways. And putting a number to that, I think, is going to be difficult, but I believe this is on point as to how this resolution should be stated, in my perspective.
Yeah.
And I'm not debating that at all. Like I said, I believe that is a very true statement. And even anecdotally, I believe it to be very true. But if someone were to come in and just ask, based on what? Do we have that information?
The data and analysis to date is for what we know. Do you have that handy anytime, Shelley?
Even something nationally. But just something, you don't have to answer right now, just something to think about, because we're going to be reading a resolution with a bunch of whereases, a truth, before we get to the therefore. And I just want to be sure we can back this up.
Well, I agree. I definitely agree with Ramiro's statement. I think the intent behind this is to show that it's not, that it's really multifaceted and affecting multiple parts of our system. That is important to call out. However, I mean, I could try to come up with some data if that's what you really
No, we're not wanting to
really
present
want.
now. We just know, do you have it in your reservoir somewhere, on somebody's computer or what have you, if we ever needed it?
If someone asked a question,
Yes.
we would be able to draw from somewhere to get that. That's all I'm asking. We
Yes.
have it in our hip pocket.
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
And then jumping down to the therefore, now therefore, we resolve, and I'm looking at section number 2, working with others to form and convene a Thurston County opioid response task force to develop and implement community-driven response plan. I don't want it. I look at number 2, those words as well as goal number 5, identifying and implementing innovative strategies. I am adamantly opposed to safe injection sites, and I'm concerned if we're just giving the director of PHSS the ability to do that. That concerns me. It seems too open-ended to me to allow a safe injection site, and I can see that fitting within the parameters of developing strategies and or implementing an innovative strategy.
So, Shelley, this board is not in favor of a safe injection site, and I don't think this is the intent there, but how can we frame it so that we capture that, not to move in that direction?
Yes, I fully understand that is not your intent. I'm trying to think of, I know that that is definitely not the intent of that innovative strategy, and we're really asking the task force to come forward with a plan.
Sure.
I'm wondering if we could put something in there about giving you the plan for approval.
Sure,
That-
and
that's what I'm looking
think
for.
about it, and you might.
And then that way you can,
Romero has a comment, but it could be as simple as excluding injection sites, that kind of verbiage like that, but that's up to, go ahead. Romero, let me get you.
On at the end of section 2, it states that response plans to address the opioid epidemic and to report to the Board of Health on a biannual basis as to the progress of the plan. Maybe in that sentence can be added that you will have to approve the implementation of the plan. Really, that's what it is developing a plan, and the Board of Health will approve the implementation of the plan. So at that point is where you determine what strategies you like to support or not.
Did you hear that, Shelley?
yes, I'm in agreement with that.
That gives me comfort, because it's not
Okay.
just one person, it's others looking at this as well. Thank you for that, and then, go ahead, you have something else on that?
No. Go ahead, you can on the floor.
Did you have something on that, though, Robin?
No, I was just going to, sure this is up. My question was about delegation of authority to the task force. This language appears to delegate authority to implement policy. But if you instead write it to recommend a plan to the Board of County Commissioners or the Board of Health, I think that addresses
Yeah.
That gives me comfort, yes.
I will like that language. Yeah.
Did you hear
And
that,
then-
Shelley? Hang on a second.
Yes, that's
Okay,
great.
Sure, just want to make sure you heard.
And finally, looking at the bottom of page 1, goal number 1, preventing opioid misuse, abuse, and dependency by improving prescribing practices. Does that mean mandatory reporting?
That does not specifically mean mandatory reporting. That is also in alignment with the state and the regional plan, and that does relate to the prescription drug monitoring program for providers and there's a lot of efforts around improving prescribing practices beyond just reporting. There's lots of different, there's education, there's alternative, access to alternative pain treatment and things like that. So it doesn't get to the notifiable condition that I think you might be referring to.
Right, and I'm looking at goal number 4, using existing data and enhancing data collection efforts to detect blah, blah, blah. That spells, to me, that screams of mandatory reporting, so we're collecting data.
In the work session that you had several months ago where we discussed this, you indicated a desire to have more data. So that this doesn't specifically call out how that enhanced data will be collected, but that the desire is there to do that.
Right, and that's why I'm wondering if rather than calling it what it is, mandatory reporting, instituting that practice, we're just dancing around being polite about it.
But is it mandatory?
It's not, but mandating it. But go ahead.
The notifiable condition can only be done by the health officer. So that
That's a
I
different
think
venue you have to
cannot
use it.
be addressed in this particular.
Okay, then.
I
All right.
agree, because you as a Board of Health will not be able to make a decision to make it a notifiable condition. But I
Okay.
believe the language that you just described sets the stage as to how that can be probably implemented or defined by the
The bigger framework.
task force and
Okay.
the health officer.
Got it, thank you for the clarification. Got it.
Anything else?
Nope.
Commissioner Edwards has a couple questions, Shelley.
Okay.
Did the prosecuting attorney's office review this, thinking about their litigation on this whole opioid issue, I guess, rather than just from maybe who your counsel is reviewing it, for making sure it's put together right? did the prosecuting attorneys folks get to look at this?
The
from
office of
the
prosecuting.
office of the prosecuting attorney get to look at this under the auspices of litigation that he might be developing, and see if that would be helpful, or if we're doing anything that could be detrimental.
Before you sign any resolution, the deputy prosecuting attorney will review it.
Well, that's
not what
different.
he's asking.
Yeah, that's not the same as the person or persons that might be involved in this litigation with the whole opioid issue. I just want to make sure that we get it right, that we don't have something in here that might be detrimental. Or that
So
everything we do
see,
helps.
if I understand what you're asking is whether this resolution is some sort of aligned or not to the prosecuting attorney's action, the legal action he just took.
That's what I'm looking for.
Is that what you're looking for?
Where he declared by his office, being elected to office, we want to move forward with a class action suit. We're part of that now.
Prosecutor Thunheim has not seen this. However, I've spoken with him about it, and he's supportive and is going to be co-chairing the opioid task force with me. So, but he has not seen this specific, and we didn't call anything out under the Board of Health in this item that that is related to the lawsuit. However, in other communities that have declared this crisis, they've done so in advance of pursuing the lawsuit. So many of the communities that we looked at, they used this as a platform to then file the lawsuit.
So then the question is...
But you've already done that through the Board of County Commissioners, so it's not addressed here.
I'm only bringing this up because it might benefit the prosecuting attorney in moving forward in his case. There could be a specific whereas he wants to add in there or delete. I don't know the answer to that. I'm just saying that there's a difference between reviewing this as to form and whatnot.
For health purposes?
Yeah, for health purposes versus
Legal purposes.
thinking of litigation
Okay.
down the road. That's the only reason I mention it before we approve it. I'd like to make sure that the prosecutor feels comfortable with everything in it.
In addition to what she's already coordinated with him.
Yes, yeah, it's kind of an additional,
So what I could do is, with the changes on Section 2, send this resolution to Scott Cushion. Scott Cushion is the lead attorney related to the litigation.
okay.
Send it to John Thunheim. I can probably CC him, but I'm concerned that perhaps he's not going to have enough time to review it
Let's
by
ask Shelley.
Thursday.
Let's ask Shelley. Shelley, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts on sending this over to the prosecutor's office, I think that's great.
One more time.
Okay.
Sure.
But it's definitely, it's not for form, it's for a definite reason. And if Scott's the one that's doing that, I would certainly think he would be the one we should run it by.
Yeah, he's the lead attorney on that litigation.
Okay.
So, and I'll CC John Thunheim in my emails, obviously, and Shelley.
So that's a last minute, not last minute, but a final task.
Yeah.
And, make sure we get that taken care of. All right.
Okay.
No? Anything else on this, Shelley?
Nope, that's all.
Anybody else in the room for opioid? All righty, so that's gets that agenda item tackled. We're going to move on to the next item. If I can find my paperwork here. So item number 6 is a department item again. The resolution declaring homelessness as a public health crisis in Thurston County. And to everybody's knowledge and benefit, I don't think everybody's read the resolution, Shelley, so...
Okay.
But you want to give a couple of highlights of what the intent of this is so that we can at least have an immediate discussion and any kind of follow-up taskings or what have you? Can you just give an overview?
Yes. So, so this is a resolution to request that you declare homelessness a public health crisis under the Board of Health. And there have been many concerns that we have had in our community regarding the increase in homelessness related to the data we received from the annual point-in-time homeless census that indicated a 43% increase in 1 year. This has been impacting those that are unsheltered on the streets. The city of Olympia has been taking actions expressing concerns to address this issue. There's also some specific health concerns regarding those that are unsheltered in our community, and risks to not only the risk to their life and for various risks of different diseases that are caused from living outdoors, but in addition, lost my place that I was gonna share with you.
It's all right, we're tracking with you. Go ahead.
Okay. There I am. So the point in time census also indicated disparities in race, and so this touches on equity and recommends some actions that the Board of Health can take by approving this resolution that would both support the City of Olympia's resolutions that they have made, as well as recommending some actions through Thurston Thrives and the Housing Action Team, as well as my staff through the Office of Housing and Homeless Prevention. And also to get ahead of the cold weather season coming up, because we know that with this increased number of people living outdoors unsheltered, that they are at risk of death due to exposure. And so there's some recommendations around that have been discussed at the Hazardous Weather Task Force, but not through the Board of Health. So this affirms some of those recommendations.
All right, is that any comments or questions? Because if not, I have one. Romero has one.
Okay.
I submitted, reviewed this, and I think I sent my comments to you back, Joe, but we haven't got a chance to connect on my suggestions. But a couple of things. And the first whereas, I was just curious if, in fact, we should have that as an initial statement, because it appears that the Board of Health, as stated on the RCW 70-05-060, has the authority over the whole county. But it seems to me that it also takes the responsibility of the crisis right off the bat. So that county-wide, that may not be what you may want to consider. So my suggestion will be to eliminate the first whereas and add it on the now therefore on the action, which is then you will add the authority to give you in the same RCW. That will be my first suggestion.
Yeah. Did you hear all that, Shelley?
I'm so sorry, it cut out just a little bit, so I didn't hear the whole part. But what I think I heard you say, Romero, is that you wanted to remove the first whereas.
Yeah, but adding the authority on the now therefore section, because now it said now therefore the Board of
yes,
Thurston County, State of Washington, under the authority of RCW 70-0560, then it will be well defined on the actions that you're planning to take.
Yes, that is an excellent suggestion.
Okay. How about you? Anything?
Well, I am curious if there's anything in here having to do with protecting the environment, where we have these homeless camps and they're using our waterways as toilets.
So on the whereas number 2, we highlighted all the impacts, included environmental impacts.
It says it right there. It would
And
actually be whereas number 1.
Yeah. So that was the suggestion as to how we needed to address your comment, Commissioner Edwards, but certainly open
It
for
doesn't
suggestion.
specifically call out a particular site somewhere, but it at least gets things in motion.
Just as long as we at least recognize it.
Yep.
Yeah. Is that adequate to?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I have not had time to digest this,
Okay.
so I'm not going to say that I'm satisfied or not. I, just from a general philosophy, am not in favor of encouraging people to come here from all other jurisdictions and enabling these folks to come and benefit from our services. I'm all about helping our own local people. If we get too enabling, I'm afraid we'll overwhelm the system. That's what I'm concerned
So,
about.
Shelley, you were about to say something about the environmental thing, and then I don't know if you heard all of what Commissioner Edwards said. So go ahead, you have the floor.
Yes, in regards to the environmental concerns, Commissioner Edwards, Section 3 says to direct the administrator of the Board of Health to prioritize this issue and to work with public health emergency preparedness, environmental health, disease control and prevention, and other county departments in the community to reduce the public health hazards associated with this crisis, such as improved hygiene, sanitation, vaccination, etc. And that is gets to the concern around encampments by including environmental health in there. But I didn't specifically address encampments directly in this resolution. And then as far as the other statement, the data that we do have indicates that 60%, so the majority of those that were identified as without housing in the point-in-time census originate from Thurston County. So, and then I believe that it was 30% were from other counties and 10% from out of state. So it was consistent with actually most of the general population.
Yeah, he has a follow-up comment. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any recognition in here where it comes to affordable housing that each one, I think it's, I'm going to say this off the top of my head, each $1,000 increase on the price of a residence eliminates about 400 potential buyers having the ability to participate in the American dream. I guess I'm just curious if that's recognized in here at all.
In this particular resolution, because it is a health action under the Board of Health and it was really focused on homelessness, there is a reference to a lack of affordable housing in our community, but it doesn't specifically go into affordable housing.
I do think that that is part of the equation, that as we add regulation that adds cost, I think it's part and parcel of what we need to look at overall for affordable housing. And I see you do have a whereas in here. Whereas the cost of housing is rising, the vacancy rate for rental housing is nearing record lows, and there is not sufficient affordable housing in Thurston County, and this is contributing to growing homelessness along with economic and family stability factors. I think that could be expanded on to at least ask that there be some consideration of the cost of regulatory issues that drive up the price. In other words, looking for some compromise in some places. I know it was brought up at the tour that we went on, and I can't tell you that the Olympia Master Builders and the real estate folks commented on that as part of the tour that the county manager and I went on. So it is part and parcel of being able to keep the cost of housing at a minimum, the increase.
You are absolutely correct that affordable housing is the leading cause of homelessness. And while that statement does reference that affordable housing is a major cause, in the actual actions, we just didn't have a recommendation explicitly on how to reduce that, other than Section 4. So to provide support and leadership in effective community-wide collaboration, coordination, planning, and policy efforts to end this crisis, and to implement actions that will reduce homelessness, increase affordable housing development opportunities, and address the health, safety, social, economic, and environmental impacts through the advice of the local continuum of care, Thurston Thrives Coordinating Council, Thurston Thrives Action Team, and subgroups. So within that piece, the increase affordable housing opportunities and to coordinate on planning and policy efforts. I think we'll get to that, but I think through a Board of Health resolution to state a specific action about how to go about that is difficult to do.
Well,
but it's in there.
It might be difficult to do, but it's quite a long resolution, and I just don't see the harm in at least addressing that.
Ask.
Yeah.
I think I've seen the language before, Shelley, say ask jurisdictions to consider reforming their regulatory process or something like that. I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing some words out there, but.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what the exact wording would be, but that's kind of I think his intent, not to try to speak for him.
Okay. So add some more specific language to that section that I just read, possibly then, section 4.
Specifically the regulatory aspects of affordable housing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to go over Romero and then come back to Commissioner Hutchins.
As I read this resolution in the authority of the Board of Health, I think we need to make a fundamental difference between affordable housing and low-income housing. And affordable housing is, as I read some of the statistics, is a family who makes $75,000 is not able to buy a home. But that doesn't mean they're homeless. And and I will be curious if this resolution can expand to talk about regulation and permitting processes. But and with all due respect, I don't think it belongs in this resolution. Because I think it's more of administrative decisions that you as a Board of County Commissioners can implement some changes on the permitting process. Because this is truly related to a Board of Health purview. And the Board of Health purview does not include the permitting process in the county. That's my 2 cents.
But should it? I don't know. Maybe, I don't know that it should or it shouldn't. I'm not being argumentative about that particular topic. It's just that it is part and parcel of what the problem is, and I'm trying to figure out a way to include it in some fashion. That's all.
I just give you my perspective in terms of how this resolution can be effective, because the more that we add it, what are the outcomes that we're going to get out of this resolution? If we add so much, then we will not be able to do much.
Well, I mean, we are talking about, I don't know, the mother-in-law house on a piece of property or something.
The ADU.
Yeah, the ADU business. So I'm just throwing that out there. When it comes to regulatory oversight, there are certain things that can be done, and they probably have to be done by the Board of County Commissioners, not the Board of Health.
Yeah.
And I would say, I know there are groups out there that would be willing to help people, especially during cold weather, but they are afraid to let people move into a garage, for an example, that's heated. And then they have to fight the Landlord-Tenant Act as they ask those people to leave and end up with a bunch of issues that they didn't anticipate, so they become hesitant to help people. And so those are the kind of regulatory things that I'm looking for adjustment, so that maybe there can be a 72-hour contract, or I'll leave the residence within 48 hours. I don't know what it is. I'm just trying to recognize that we need to adjust the regulatory process that people come up against when they try to help.
To alleviate the burden.
Yeah, to make it easier for citizens, because I don't think government can always bail us out of this problem. There are church groups out there that have expressed this exact thing to me, where they'd be willing to let somebody stay during the cold weather period especially, but they're scared to death, they're up against the Landlord-Tenant Act.
So just to clarify, all your statements and perspective, I don't disagree with it. That is not my point. Because everything that you stated absolutely is part of the perhaps the larger solution of affordable housing. The comment that I made is whether it should belong in this resolution or not.
Yeah.
That is really my
I don't know the answer to that.
Because I personally, and I don't think belongs under the umbrella of the Board of Health. The permitting process and some of the code amendments that you're considering implementing, that's within the purview of the Board of County Commissioners. And that's my recommendation is perhaps doesn't belong in this resolution. I'm not arguing with your point.
No. Maybe we could even refer to the Board of County Commissioners need to look at regulatory oversight. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
But I just think that oftentimes the bigger issues that could help, and they don't always have to cost a lot of money, are left out of the equation sometimes. I'm just trying to massage it in. This is a work session, so trying to figure it out.
I totally agree.
So what's you want something in there?
Well, I'm just throwing that out. I'm not really given that direction. I haven't digested this whole thing.
So Shelley, on hold until Commissioner Evers can think a little bit through, but you see where we're trying to go with it, right?
I do. I just would consider Section 4 if you wanted to just strengthen that language a little bit, but I do feel like the part that talks about increased affordable housing development opportunities and working with others on the coordination, planning, and policy that is a space for that to happen.
So
but yes, this under Board of Health, just remembering that this does apply to the entire county, and it includes everything in this resolution, does extend to the municipalities as well. So I agree that there could be some actions that the Board of County Commissioners could take, and we could explore. But for this particular resolution under Board of Health, I think that we get to that, but I'm happy also to, if you think of some language that suggests some stronger relationship, then we can add that.
Are we under a time constraint on this issue?
Oh, for the homelessness?
Yeah.
Yes.
For the
We want it to be
resolution.
done on the 14th. That's what you're asking.
Tuesday,
Yes.
and that's what in my mind is the time
For today, you're
constraints.
not. But for the 14th, you are.
So,
And is there a reason? I'm just wondering, I see Olympia passed a resolution within the last few days, and are we trying to coordinate something that everybody is kind of getting in line here to pull across the finish line somehow? Is that what's going on?
Do you have a comment, Shelley?
Yes. So City of Olympia has taken several different actions. Tonight, City of Olympia, I believe, will be declaring an emergency for homelessness in the City of Olympia. So this does provide some support and alignment with that. But also the full point-in-time census report just came out, and so there is a lot of timely attention on this issue, and I think it's really important at this time to not delay this particular action, assuming this is the action that you want to take.
Mostly alignment. Anything else?
No.
So on the oversight regulatory thought, give it some more thought, put it in the parking lot, but give it some more thought over the next couple of days. And Commissioner Edwards and all of us are kind of give you some input, and we'll see where we go or not go with that. Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay. So at least it's a good structure conversation right now, but we'll see how it goes.
how about if at lunch break I add some language on Section 4 to include?
I think that's the place to put it, yeah.
Yeah, the Board of County Commissioners
Okay.
to look in some.
But I just want to give closure, because I need to move on to Commissioner
Then
Hutchins.
I'll circle back with you, and I'll send you a copy, Shelley, and then
Okay.
and then we'll go through the attorney proposal. Will
Yeah,
that,
okay.
will that work?
Okay. Commissioner Hutchins has a couple of questions. Shelley?
Yeah, we don't want to lose
Okay.
the momentum going ahead with what Olympia's doing. I don't know if I'm reading something with the wrong emphasis, Shelley, or whether it's redundancy or missing a comma, but in the 8th whereas, 8 down or 4 up from the bottom, whereas there are 1,670 children,
Yeah.
and looking at the 38 of those experiencing homelessness are families with children, with youth, with adults, children, and families making up. So I don't know if it's redundant or there should be a comma after youth, or after children rather, but it says family with children with youth. It just read funny to me.
Okay.
That's all. That's all. My only comment. This is a very comprehensive, well done 2.5-page resolution.
No,
So
that is good. I think suggestion will be to eliminate with youth.
there you go.
Because the children will cover.
So I applaud you for that, Shelley.
Oh, thank you.
Sure, and so, just my comment, and just correct me if I'm wrong, this is not to, I'll say the words, ask for more FTEs or really any more money. It is a comprehensive resolution to give synergy and surge to the ongoing crisis, and then give the public more awareness that the Board of Health and the Board of County Commissioners take this seriously. Is that
Yes.
correct? Is that how you see it?
Yes.
All right. Any final? No? Okay.
I guess one final thing. My idea of helping homeless people kind of is reflected by the Salvation Army's process of helping people. So is there something here that's pushing towards those private groups that are also helping?
Oh, Mr. You want to elaborate on how the Salvation Army and other nonprofits assist in this resolution, Shelley?
I'm sorry, I'm just not quite understanding what your question is there.
Maybe Section 6 addresses that, because the Hazardous Weather Task Force includes all members from the services providers, including the Salvation Army.
Oh, they're prime.
So I was looking at acknowledging those service groups out there.
Yeah, not only acknowledging, but recognizing even, it really bothers me that we always have empty beds at the Salvation Army, regardless what. And the reason we have empty beds is because we have individuals that have chosen the alternative lifestyle that they don't want to help themselves necessarily.
Did we talk about that at the Housing Weather Task Force?
I want to help people that do want to help themselves, recognizing that we have addicted folks and mental health issues. But to me, the push should be the emphasis should be helping those that want to help themselves, very much like the Salvation Army model. So.
In Section 4, that says provide support for effective community-wide collaboration, and then it through the advice of the local Thurston County Continuum of Care. All of those nonprofits, including the Salvation Army, are members of these different groups. So the local Continuum of Care, and C, Thurston Thrives Housing Action Team, and the multiple subgroups. So I think it does indicate in here support of those organizations providing those services, but it doesn't call out any specific organization or best practice.
Doesn't recognize all those folks, though, the different groups. I'm not saying we need to recognize all of them, but again, getting away from government always trying to solve every problem. I like to recognize those that are helping, and it doesn't have to be by name, but the numerous private organizations or something like that, if it was referred to in there, recognizes them without naming them.
Okay. Also, and in one of the whereas, I think it refers to whereas Thurston County, through the Public Health and Social Service Department, provides approximately $5.8 million each year to 35 agencies. That also is another area of which the Thurston County provides funding to support those organizations, but we could certainly add call that out more specifically.
Do you know how much they contribute? I know the government contributes, but they must contribute an awful lot of time, effort, and resources to help as well.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm just trying to recognize those folks that.
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
That's all.
So I'm just curious as to where we can do that.
I know.
I don't think we want to list 35 different agencies in
No.
a resolution.
No, that's not the
I
point.
just think we want to recognize that there's a heck of a lot of, besides government doing what we can do, there's a heck of a lot of effort that's going into this by,
Interfaith.
interfaith groups, private groups.
Because I don't know if maybe Section 5 sort of addresses your.
I guess I'm just kind of making that statement and leaving it up to others to figure it out.
So let me read that to you just
Okay.
to make sure if perhaps it meets your intent or more detail. Section 5, convene a hazardous weather task force and implement a county-wide hazardous weather code blue plan to prevent death and illness related to hazardous weather conditions to the vulnerable and shelter population, and designate the Director of Public Health to the power of activity code blue, to activate code blue, and to identify and allocate resources in partnership with nonprofits and local municipalities in order to increase shelter capacity and identify funding to support the activation of code blue as needed.
And that happens with the HWTF and the HAT.
So is that language satisfies to a larger extent, or you would like to see a little more detail?
The only reason I even ask is because government is trying to do something, but so are the other organizations out there, and they're putting probably in, they might be putting more resources in than we are. I don't know the answer.
Which goes back to the partnership, as I think,
Okay.
because the solution really is not the government is not going to resolve the problem.
No, that's my
And the private outfits will not be able to resolve the problem either. But the
We're all in this
cooperation and the
together.
partnership, but I believe Section 5 sort of addresses that.
Okay.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Any final comments on that particular point, Shelley?
I do think, though, Section 5 is specific to just the hazardous weather time period. So if you did want to emphasize support of more organizations, I feel like we could include a little bit more in the up in the whereas section that I referred to.
That's fine, I'm
Can
not.
can you take that for note and see what you come up with if it works out?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
I think she's got it. Sorry, I didn't mean
Yep,
to.
I'm
Yeah,
good.
okay. Okay, so I'm going to move on to, still on the agenda, unless there's any more. You have one more? No? Okay. Item number 7, which is the board members with their public outreach, any kind of comments. Number 8 is the director's report. You'll be able to have a director's report.
Yes.
And a health officer's report, will Dr. Wood be there?
Yes, I believe she will be there.
For Thursday morning.
And Romero's asking for the TV to be there also, so I'm just letting you know. And then if there's no other questions, then we'll move to adjournment. Is there any comments about the Board of Health for June 14th, 2018 at 10 o'clock that day? So, I'm seeing none.
So I'd just like to recap.
Yeah, recap real quick. Yeah, sure.
Particularly related to the 2 resolutions before you on the opioid crisis. Commissioner Hutchins requested on the 4th whereas not to change it, but making sure that we have enough data in the event that somebody will ask.
That's all.
Well, so we work on that. Also on Section 2, we'll add language. They will put the Board of Health to approve the plan as well as the implementation strategies behind the plan. And as soon as those revisions are done, I will send this to Scott Cushion. He is the lead attorney dealing with the lawsuit, and to see if there's any alignment or not, or any pitfalls with the prosecuting attorney's effort on the larger context. And as soon as that is completed, I will ask Lydia to process this resolution to the attorney to have signature before Thursday. On the resolution for homelessness crisis, I will incorporate some of the comments, some of my suggestions, and more topographical than anything else. And on Section 4, Section 4 will add something in terms of the Board of County Commissioners to take actions to look at the current permitting regulations to alleviate affordable housing issues. And Shelley will provide some additional language on the whereases to specifically address the nonprofits.
Did you catch all that, Shelley? Just to make
Yes,
sure?
yes, I did. That
Okay.
was a great summary, Romero. Thank you.
So if
Any
you-
final comments from your end?
Nope, that's all.
So before you leave, Shelley, if you can give me your proposals on the changes on the whereases, and I will incorporate all the changes on the version that I have.
Okay, thank you so much. I will do that on my break.
All right.
Thank you.
Outstanding work. Thank you very much, Shelley.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All righty, let's take a 10-minute break and come back at 10:35.
That will take me to 18% of my battery.
Oh, my God. Okay.
So you can plug it into your computer.
Go on.
Hmm?
Okay, so we're back on the pre-agenda agenda, and so we're going to cover proclamations and awards, but Labadee is not here, so we'll just move right into briefing, public hearing, decisions pending, then we'll come back to proclamations and awards. So the first one is Central Services rates for 2019-2020. It was a briefing given on 7 June.
Just to facilitate the conversation, I provided you with a copy of the two options that you have before you. The one option was as is, meaning no adjustments. And that by itself is the reduction in rates for 2018 by 0.993%, which is equates to reduction in general fund by $395,000. The other option that we have is to go ahead and split the department between Central Services and IT department. And that will increase the 2019 rates by 3.2%. However, the overall impact is an overall reduction in the general fund by $415,000 compared to 2000. So the decision for you today is whether you would like to direct the Director of Central Services to go ahead and consider as is, and then direct rates, or to include the IT department as well.
Do you have any comments, concerns, or questions?
No, I'm going to kind of listen to you guys. I hear what you've got to say about it.
Yeah, I was going to ask for recommendation, what staff recommends, or what Martin does.
I'm a split guy, so.
My recommendation would be to go with the split because you achieve the objective of having the IT department and also doesn't have a negative impact on the overall.
It's foundation building.
When will we be going out for an IT director? If we do this.
When you create the position, that's probably 2019-2020.
So is that coming up pretty quick?
In October.
If we do this?
October, you'll put it on the books, and 2019, you'll go out sometime. Who knows when?
So what we could do is probably in December advertise the position and just start the process. And January 1st, when the budget is approved, then we have budget authority to fill it.
Yeah.
So we can do
You
that.
don't have to, you just have the authority at that point. So it could be 6 months later, who knows? But it's just setting the tone. And we need to weigh other things going on at the same time, so it's not like it'll happen at the snap of a finger. Your thoughts?
I remember this now, discussing it, and Martin seems to favor the split as well.
Is that right, Martin, do you?
Is that right, Martin?
What we've attempted to do is, in looking at the objectives that the board has set for advancing the county's ability for embracing and leveraging the technology assets that we have and the resources that we have, and trying to do that in a more focused way, I think greater consolidation and centralization and strengthening governance all are steps that move us in a good direction. So I think this is something that makes sense for the county to explore.
It seems to me the others involved with the county, directors and electeds, were in favor of this as well.
They saw this as
Sound
the
favorable.
hybrid option, which was not a full consolidation, but partial, by focusing on the positions coming out of the appointed director departments. It's, in a sense, a pilot or a step towards proving the concept. So I think there was support for that step.
By golly, I'm ready to make a decision.
We're going to go with the split.
Split.
I will let our finance team know there's a lot of work to work out with our financial office partners to get this into the budget by, what is it, June 30? So we'll get to work.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Martin. So the next item we have is the briefing of public hearing decision, Spooner's land use request.
Yeah, and I also give you a copy of the options that you have before you is a map. in here. And just to give you as a matter of background, this was a request by an individual who is the owner of a property which has two different designations on this property. This went through the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission's recommendation to the board was to go with option 1, which includes a no change that will be on your first map. And option 2, which is the proponent's recommendation, is to unify the land use on the property they own. Option 3 is to change totally the designation for the entire property this individual owns. Through the briefing, staff's recommendation is to move forward with option 1 and option 2 through a public hearing process.
Do you have any comments or questions?
I'm good.
Which one do you want to do?
Two.
Two?
Well, staff recommends moving to the public hearing with options 1 and 2. That's what you're looking for, a thumbs up?
The recommendation is just a thumbs up, whether you like to entertain the staff's recommendation to move option 1 and option 2
Yes.
to a formal public hearing.
Yes.
Yeah, options 1 and 2 for all three of us.
Thank you.
All right. Love it. Thank you, Allison.
You guys are funny.
So the next item is the climate mitigation plan, proposed new targets, briefing on 7 June also.
Yeah, you also receive a briefing from Chris Hawkins as well as staff from TRPC.
Is Chris there?
He was.
I don't know.
It was. And
His stuff's here.
there was a couple of decision points for you. One is the whether you would like to support and approve the new target emissions, which is 45% below the 2015 levels by 2030 and 85% below the 2015 levels by 2050. Also, through the briefing, you may recall there is an upcoming briefing on June 27th with staff as well as staff from TRPC will give you a perspective as to how the phase 2 of this process is going to work. Phase 1 is currently underway, and it's really just gathering information as to how this plan should come together. But the option number 2 of phase 2 of this process speaks more about the implementation and strategies behind that. So, staff recommended for you to consider approving those targets at this point, or you could have the options, which is perhaps my recommendation, for you to wait until you have the briefing on the 27th to have a larger perspective and a larger understanding of all the different nuances of this process. So, but it is up to you how you like to go
Sure,
ahead. Two-step process or a single-step process?
That'd be very beneficial for me.
Do you have any comments or questions here?
No, I think I'm going to go along with what Merrill just said. I'm good with that.
By the way, Michael
Wait till
Brennan
the-
is
wait till
here
the
from
briefing.
TRPC.
Yeah, with the briefing.
Yes, yeah.
Definitely with the briefing. And I don't understand how you can go to targets without having a discussion how you arrive at those targets.
Right.
And that's been my whole stance on how to have a discussion on this, especially when there's agreements and disagreements, especially the disagreement piece is there. Just very, very, I'll say the word, not sensitive, but cautious about going forward too far too fast, because I know there's a larger community out there that's super emotional about it on all sides of this, and I want to make sure it goes forward in a very productive manner, community-wide, and I just got to see the business rules or the rules of engagement, whatever you want to say, of how we discuss this and have a disagreement and still move forward, especially when it comes to targets. So I get it, you have to have targets. I got that. But I want to make sure we all arrive at the same place at the same time. But I'm definitely for the 27th of June briefing before we.
So you want to hold making a decision and agreeing with the targets until the June 27th briefing, so you will have a larger understanding of the issue.
But once we have that briefing, do we need to decide then,
Yeah, well, they're going to ask you at some point.
on the 27th?
Well, at that point, you will have the option to agree with the targets and also whether you like to be part of phase 2 implementation.
It's a two-part question.
Okay.
So it will be a 2-point, but
All right.
at that point, we'll.
Good.
I'm looking for something that's realistic. And
That's what I'm saying.
That's where I'm going, so.
But there might be a disagreement on the path to getting to realistic, and I don't want the shouting and vitriolic approaches that sometimes come along with that. And I just want to keep the emotional aspect down to a lowest level possible.
Well, there'll be a discussion or debate over what is realistic.
Oh, that could be happening. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
part
How do
of
you
it too.
define
That
that?
is part
That's
of it.
part
There's
of
people
what
out there. There's
gotta
both
be
sides
achievable.
out there. Yeah.
Michael Brennan is here, and as well as Chris. Could I ask him to come to the table, and maybe you can give some perspective as to what type of information you would like to see on the June 27th briefing?
Sure about it. I don't.
It'd be nice if we had something I could look at with that information, and I don't have that. I may have it on my desk from a previous briefing.
You have some copies of draft notes from last week's briefing as well.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
So as I understand, the June 27 upcoming briefing is related specifically to how phase 2 will be implemented. And so hopefully at this point we'll address the business rules within that context. But also, if I may, how the targets relates to those actions of phase 2 implementation.
Sure. So as part of scoping out phase 2, we'll develop an interlocal agreement, presumably to be signed by each of the jurisdictions, indicating that they intend to participate in the second phase of work. Our intention is to include the business rules, as you put, in the interlocal agreement, the rules of engagement, how discussion should play out during the second phase of work. In terms of how the targets factor into the second phase of work, this is really establishing a common target for all the jurisdictions to work toward. Mm-hmm. So as we develop strategies and actions to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions as part of phase 2, we want to ensure that we're doing enough to hit that common emissions target.
Okay. So I think we have a briefing on the 27th, right? Mm-hmm. And so my thing is I want to know how we arrived at that data and that analysis of those targets. Be able to have that kind of discussion too at the same time. So the process.
And Mike, it says that we are working in concert with the other 3 cities, that we've agreed to work together. Are we actually on par then? Are we still on target with them? Or are we ahead? Or are we behind? Or are they aligned themselves?
That's really the purpose of having the resolution adopting common targets, to ensure that we are aligned, if you will. So as we noted in our June 7th briefing, each of the jurisdictions has adopted a climate goal, but the targets vary widely.
Well, they do, okay, yeah.
Yes. So this is really putting us all on a similar pathway.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Anything?
Hey, Michael, could you also address the 1990 targets? Because in here, I think through the briefing was a question. Back in 1990, it was a target of reducing by 25% the levels of 1990 levels by 2020. 2020 is in 2 years. Have we accomplished that? Or, and I think it was my question, or we're just moving the target to 2015 without seeing if we have done any particular impact?
Sure. So the 1990 target, as part of the Sustainable Thurston Plan, which TRPC adopted each of the jurisdictions accepted via resolution. When I say accepted by a resolution, the county, for example, or City of Lacey, Tumwater, has not formally adopted those targets into its comprehensive plan. So this isn't any sort of regulatory target you're going toward. The 1990 target really was consistent with what the science told us we need to do to reduce our global emissions to no more than 2 degrees Celsius increase by the end of the century. In terms of the 2020 target, we have not achieved it as a region. We have reduced our greenhouse gas emissions some since 2010 based on the data we have. But the reason we're proposing a new baseline, 2015 in this case, is we have much better data for that baseline year from which we can measure and manage our emissions going forward. That 1990 target was based on a broad estimate of our emissions in that year. So we really want to have good data going forward to determine how well we're doing.
I guess my question would be, what did you determine was different between the 1990 and 2015? I mean, you say you have better science, I guess, is what you have to go by. What was the difference between those two? I'm trying to figure out a starting point that's realistic and then an accomplishment that becomes realistic.
So the 1990 target was based on a broad calculation of the county's population in 1990 was roughly 161,000 people, times a per capita number of emissions that year for a Washington resident, which is about 12.95 metric tons of carbon. So the 2015 baseline we're looking at now is a much more granular number. It incorporates transportation, energy, agricultural, and waste emissions data, and uses a common methodology from ICLEI to establish that number. So it's a much more...
ICLEI used an acronym there.
Sorry, it's known as ICLEI now. It's Institute for Sustainability. It's a German-based organization that develops sustainability solutions for local governments. That's the methodology used by Thurston Climate Action Team, which conducted the emissions inventory.
Is that called the best science then? Is that what you're kind of referring to? Is that are those folks are the ones that have created the best available science?
It's not we're not talking about science here. We're talking about emissions methodology for calculating our greenhouse gas emissions.
How does that figure in with, so since 1990, automobiles, I'll just use one example, automobiles, have been under strict guidelines each year, apparently a little more stringent each year to reduction of emissions. And I say that broadly because there's a lot of things in emissions. So are we taking that into consideration? Are we saying that that did work that time period from 90 to 2015? Was that beneficial that we had that in place? And what was that reduction? Okay, population went up, more cars, but supposedly pollution maybe went down. I don't know. Did it go down? So
on a per mile driven basis.
I don't know.
Yeah,
but overall,
better emissions controls and better efficiencies of
right.
automobile technology, yes. On a per capita basis, yes, there's a reduction in the amount of emissions that has been occurring. But the 1990 baseline or benchmark was something that was set in the mid-2000s and readily agreed upon nationally, internationally as a target to use, basically to use that base level of 1990 emissions levels and figure out what do we need to do on the whole around the world to reduce our emissions to a level that avoids some of the worst impacts of climate change and global warming. So this new baseline and target is really an adjustment from that 1990 baseline to get it to a more current year and have better local data about that from which we can work more effectively towards reducing emissions in our community. So it makes it both more accurate and local in that data, and it gets us to the point where we can all work together on a very similar target on the local level. So it's still that same total emissions reduction that we're shooting for, it's bringing it up to a different year to have that baseline be more reflective of good data that we have locally. So that's kind of a key distinction I want to make there, is that we're not abandoning the 1990 emissions target, it's adjusting the baseline year to a new baseline year that we have better local data about.
But we were successful in reducing emissions during that period of time.
The curve is bending in the right direction towards the desired
Even
level.
though the population is going up.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So we want to bend the curve to keep on track with that longer term target that we're trying to get to, which is, it has to be out there in the future, because effectively this is a lot of change. It's a big change to get our emissions reduced to the level that is consistent with those kind of wider national and international targets.
Are we working under like the Clean Air Act or something? There's a Clean Water Act, there's a Clean Air Act. Is there some regulatory oversight that goes along with this?
Not federally, not at that level, but there are international agreements that this is trying to keep us in tune with, and certainly at the state level, there's a desire to move towards less carbon emissions.
But no specific legislation that says you have to do X.
Right. This is
Okay.
very voluntary.
Okay.
Anything else?
No. I look forward to the 27th.
27th.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good to see you again, Mike. Chris.
See you soon, Mike. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. So,
Thank you.
I don't know if we have a legislative or a PIO portion, but we'll move into those two. PIO.
Are we going to have legislative?
Have something?
I just had a question of some of the staff. There's something coming up over in Yakima that
I could have got that for you.
done. You folks know any, Jennifer was talking about this at that meeting I was at up north. Something to do with legislative. I'm going to talk with a couple of folks that are apparently willing to help us on some of our legislative issues. They're currently elected officials. Did you hear anything about that?
No, I have not heard, and we have scheduled check-in phone calls, conference calls with her, so I will probably ask.
Can you ask her that question?
What was the?
I just didn't hear back. There was a couple legislators that she was, I don't know how to put this exactly, but wanting to interact with, I'll say. Maybe they're up for re-election or something like that. I don't know.
I don't know.
She knows something about this. If you could just ask her when that date is and if that's still on. I know that's pretty vague, but
Yeah.
as you're talking to her, I'm thinking she'll pick up on it.
Let's go to PIO then.
Okay. We had the Courthouse and Civic Center project meeting with the leaders last week. I was given the go-ahead to move forward with setting up a meeting for the citizen work group. We have 18 members on that group so far. The doodle poll that I put out is for meetings to happen within next week or the week after that. So it'll be one day during the last 2 weeks in June. I'm getting good responses back, so I should be able to set up the invite tomorrow. I posted an OpenGov story and survey on the Comcast cable franchise about 2 weeks ago. We've received 110 responses. 37 of those are registered and 73 are unregistered.
What does that mean?
If you go in and register, you say your name, your email address, those types of things, it will show the responses to everyone. And the reason why they do that is a liability issue, because if you post something, I actually got a message from the company that puts it out there that someone had posted a bad word. And so they have to pull that back and then contact the person and say, please go in and change that. If you don't register, they won't show your comments for that reason. So 37 of them said, yes, I'll give you my name and email address. So now everybody can see those. 73 did not provide that information. So those cannot be seen by anyone but the administrators.
And what were the comments? Yay, nay?
Um,
What was it all about?
There's a mix. What the survey is about is the customer services provided by Comcast, viewing the PEG channels, so any of the TC Media local access channels. So it's getting feedback on those types of things, how we can. And we can put anything, so that we can use that information to negotiate on the franchise agreement. So it's really getting that citizen feedback. And then the cities, so Lacey, Tumwater, Olympia, and Thurston County are going to hold a public meeting sometime next month to also invite the public to provide feedback as well, with the attorney present. So
The survey is part of the mandatory public outreach that's a piece of our franchise negotiations.
You say the attorney, is that the attorney from Colorado?
yes, Ken Feldman.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. And so then I've also talked about the microphones in this room. I've gotten a quote from the company that I was talking to. I haven't had an opportunity to look at it because I just got it. But from what I understand, Martin's starting to look into it as well. Is that what you were talking about?
Yes, a couple of steps that we need to take. First of all, Robin and I are going to have a conversation with TCM and just go through the process of the contract elements and whether that meets performance or not. And then, but at the end result, we need to fix what is going on in this room, and fix it and enhance it to a way they actually we can use all this wonderful equipment. So whether it's through the review of the contract will give us the next steps, but certainly it's just a combination of all the different steps that we need to take.
Then I can just forward the information on to you guys to include that. Okay, so I'll just forward that on to you.
We duplicating efforts in.
That's what I'm trying to avoid. So I'm just gonna forward it to Martin.
You.
That's what I'll do. Okay,
Yes.
that's what I'll do. And then an update on the audio visual and the synchronization in this room. So it's not a YouTube or a bandwidth issue. And TC Media last week came in and adjusted something. I don't know the technical stuff. And it should be syncing up now where the audio and visual sync up. We're going to test that this afternoon. It worked last week. We're testing it again this afternoon. So it was not a YouTube or bandwidth issue.
Should be.
Wanted to. Stop it. And then I also talked about the company about doing closed captioning because that was something that we thought would be maybe a good idea to have. For live streaming, the systems that they have out now, they're only about 80% accurate. And so that is kind of a liability. So it's not suggested for live yet until that's been tested a bit more. But as far as the closed captioning for our playbacks or on demand, that would need to be done at TC Media because it's a system that they would have to use when they're doing the playback to include the closed captioning in there. So it wouldn't rest in this room like we maybe thought it would. It would actually be at TC Media. So that's something to think about.
I would imagine.
It's a system that does it for you, but you have to go back and review it.
Yeah, you got to review it.
Yeah. And then about a month ago, I was authorized to move forward with a contract with CGI, the video promotion. Prior to sending that back, I reached out to a county that had dealt with them recently and talked to them about it and was advised not to move forward.
Less than favorable.
It was less than favorable, and so I did not sign that contract or move forward with it, so we will not be doing that. Just wanted to give you an update on that. It was not favorable, so. Yes, sir.
Is there an alternative, or is it just a dead issue now?
With them, I believe it's a dead issue now, and it had a lot to do with the advertising that they did to reach out to the businesses. It was not received well by the business community, and it was their tactics that they used, and so they advised us to maybe not move forward with that. So
and I understand that's dead with them, but is there a competitor out there that? that might be different or more viable?
Well, as far as it being free, probably not, but we could work with TC Media to develop somewhat similar types of videos. It just, yeah, so
Okay.
so that is an option to do that. We would need to do all the legwork on that one instead of having someone else
Well,
do
thank
it.
you
So.
for exercising good judgment and reaching
Yeah,
out.
I had I needed to get verification, so I did that. And then lastly from me, I was invited to sit on the Thurston Community Economic Alliance Branding Committee, and that's through the EDC, so I will be starting on that, and then I will report back. They're meeting on Monday, or they met yesterday, and I couldn't be there, but I'll report back once I get a little bit more information from Aslan and Shauna Stewart. That's all I have.
About Brian.
Good morning, everyone. So on May 30th, my family welcomed our son, Leo. He was born about 6 pounds, so he's doing well. Yeah, so on to the work stuff. So we've seen slightly above average growth on social media over the last 3 months. What I mean by that is we normally average about 10 likes on Facebook every week. We're getting between 14 and 20 likes on Facebook every week, and that's pretty standard across all the platforms right now. And we're continuing to make progress toward our followership goals at the end of the year. And we continue to put emphasis on gaining new followers on Facebook because that's where we seem to have the most trouble in terms of reaching that goal. We have a pretty good trend line leading to all the other ones, but Facebook, we need to get it up. So we continue to work on that. And then some of the activities we've been doing, we had the photo contest that we're wrapping up this week. We're in the last month of that. That was a 12-week contest. We have the department director promotion videos. We've released 2 of those. We have a couple more in the queue. They'll be going out in the next 10 days. And I'm just working with the directors to make sure that's meeting their intent. And we're uploading those directly to Facebook and applying a small budget behind it to boost it to reach more people with the intent of gaining some more followers. And the same on that same vein, we did the Meet the Directors television special about 40 or so days ago. That now has 319 views on YouTube. That's the highest. That's the highest video, the highest video reach we've had on that platform. So that's performing really well, and we got a lot of good feedback on that. And then in terms right now, I'm working on the last Thurston County connection. I just reviewed it yesterday. It looked really good. But I sent some changes over to TCM. Excuse me. And pending any changes from the review process there, we should be able to get that out by the end of this week. And I'm working with Commissioner Hutchings' office on highlighting Salmon Passage and County Parks and Trails for our next episode. We'll be filming that in the next couple weeks. And also, 3 weeks ago, I was working with emergency services on the rollout of the Thurston Community Alert. We did a press release and a PSA on the radio, along with some social media activity. And since that release, they've seen a subscribership at 7,284 as of yesterday. So that's been highly successful. Any questions? That's all I have.
Yeah, are you losing sleep?
A little bit, but it's all right.
Good.
It's all worth it.
Questions?
Nope. Thank you.
All right, Commissioners check-in, budget calendar decision and budget process decision.
So the calendar is this publication that you have in your packet. You may also remember that we handed out 2 other forms of the calendar. One was a much cleaner timeline, and then of course the narrative version. This calendar The calendar has the call for budgets on June 21st. Offices and departments prepare their budget in our budget system and submit them on August 6th. Staff follow up the preliminary 1 budget, which is agency request budget, delivered to the board September 7th. we hold work sessions, and then hold the public hearing. The next legal date is on December, where we would have to have the budget book published on November 19th, the board's preliminary budget. Hold the public hearing on December 3rd and 4th, and then you would adopt the budget on or before December 14th. So these are what's called in state law alternative dates. And what I would do, if you're comfortable with these dates, instead of adopting a budget in October, I'll have these dates on a resolution that you would adopt within the next week or two.
Instead of October, you said in a week or two?
No, we'd adopt the resolution adopting the alternative calendar.
Oh, yes.
Oh, there we go.
Next week.
December.
And then that puts us on track to do the budget in November, or December.
December.
Yeah, actually
That's what
adopt
we
in
want.
December.
I heard the
rather
same
than
thing.
October.
Wait a
Yeah,
minute.
sorry. No, you have to approve a resolution to adopt the alternative dates.
Okay.
So would that be December 14th?
That is our current proposed date. Now, these dates, with the exception of a few dates that are required by law, like the date of the public hearing on December 3rd and 4th, the other dates are somewhat flexible, and with public notice, we can change them. What you'd be adopting is the alternative dates to the budget, which puts us on the December track.
Yeah, no, December 14th, that's when you drop the mic for the year.
Yeah,
That's it?
it has to be done.
The pen.
You can go up to December 31st.
We're out.
If you want to.
So the calendar, is there an issue with the calendar? An issue with the calendar?
No,
Okay.
nope.
I'll put this on your agenda.
Thank you.
The next one will be the issue. The
The
process?
next item is a process.
All righty.
I have a write-up because the last time we met, I'm gonna print this out. Michelle just sent this to me.
Process and priorities.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about if that's what you want to do. I'm gonna send this to the printer. Sorry, I didn't have this prepared sooner. So,
I'll get it. Go ahead.
okay, so what we're gonna look at is the last time we met, but you had asked me to resurrect, if you will, the
Goose egg.
different options on budget process. So we talked very briefly about what the different processes are. What's printing now is kind of a synopsis and a much consolidated list of what these are. So you can take a look and we can talk about what you may or may not want to do. And it includes the options on budget reductions. So, thank you, Romero. So starting at the top is the incremental budget process.
Thanks, sir.
This is what most governments do. Here's what you have today, what changes do you want to make? It's what offices and departments do for the preliminary ask. And then the Board of County Commissioners choose between all of the different things that offices and departments ask for, and how much of those will you find? So the flip side of this is in a cut scenario, in incremental budgeting, you can ask offices and departments, and this is quite standard too, to give you scenarios up to 3% or 5% or 10% scenarios, and the board would then choose from those items what you would cut out of any individual office or department based on their choices that they've given you. Like I said, it's pretty standard. What we've discovered, if you will, as we talk to other counties, is that many counties do continue to do the incremental budget with cut exercise, and that even though office or department says, if you reduce my budget, I'm going to eliminate this thing, once the budget's adopted, elected officials aren't necessarily committed isn't the right word, but bound. They're not bound to cut that particular thing that the board has chosen, but they are bound to operate within the budget that the board has adopted. So incremental budgeting, perhaps not the best path forward, and the decisions that would be put in front of you in a reduction exercise wouldn't necessarily play out the way they would at the state. In the state, when you do incremental budgeting and a state agency says, if you cut my budget, I'm going to cut this, the state eliminates the underlying law that implements that program. That's what doesn't happen in counties and cities. So that's what makes it a little more empty. So that's incremental. Target-based budget is when you give every office and department a target, and they have flexibility to spend within the target, but that's all they get. So, you know, it's exactly what it is. Here's how much we have. It's relatively close to the freeze options that we'll talk about below. Priority-based is what we've done. We bring together the offices and departments with similar activities that take a holistic approach to the budget in a sector of government, if you will. It aligns with our strategic plan. Offices and departments are asked to work together within an amount of money that they've been given for that target area. They don't only come in and say, spend more on this. They have the ability amongst themselves to decide if something that one of the offices is currently doing is not as important as some new thing that might advance the county overall in that area. They don't make a budget decision. They do only make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, and the board then decides. But the conversation that we had 2 years ago was for this to operate effectively and to build trust, if a team came in with a recommendation that met all of the requirements, covered mandatory services, didn't go above the amount that they had to spend, was considered feasible, was unanimous, as long as the team met these criteria, that the board would honor the proposal amongst the team members. So that's what happened for most of the teams. But as you're aware, the one team, the Law and Justice team, declined to participate. The board had put into the budget instructions that should a team not come with a unanimous recommendation, they would all receive maintenance level budgets. That's pretty much what was implemented until early 2017, when this board decided to appropriate additional funds to that group. So it was, overall, it was pretty successful. One of the aspects of it is every team had more money than they started with. That would not necessarily be the case in this budget, as you know. The graph that we've been looking at show that you will most likely need to make cuts this time around. In my experience, I worked with the state during 4 rounds of priority of government. The process actually worked better when we were doing reductions than when we had more money to spend. But I would also share with you that those were cabinet agencies and not separately elected officials. So there's a different political underlying foundation here. The next item on the list is zero-based budgeting. Zero-base is extremely interesting process, but it is incredibly labor-intensive. One of the key aspects of zero-base is you have to be able to identify your budget drivers. Every office and department in this county does not know what their budget drivers are. We are teaching the concept in Budget Academy now. Part of our instructions this year is for every office and department to submit at least 2 of their budget drivers when they submit the budget, so we can start to build this library of drivers. But because we don't have those now and it takes a while to build them, I don't think that zero-based is a feasible option at this time.
Budget drivers, I guess I just need clarification for that. Does budget drivers mean, I'm just going to use an example, running the jail, the population drivers are maybe the judges in sentencing, or the way the prosecutor does something. What do you mean? That's what I think of, kind of driving the budget out of whack.
A budget driver is, so public defense is perhaps, before we go to the jail, public defense would be a good example. The number of cases and the average time it takes to complete a case would be their drivers, because you can multiply the number of cases by the time it takes, get to the minimum workload that you need, and convert that into FTEs to know how much of a budget you need based on the FTEs you cost out. You know, what are your personnel costs, what are the support costs? It's that foundational widget, if you will, that gets you to how much money do you really need.
I mean, things like medical costs in the jail, how do you do that? Because you don't know if you're going to get somebody in there with cancer or what else. So how do you prepare for that?
Thing. So there is, you know, you never know if you're going to get a murder case in public defense.
Right.
There are always something extraordinary, and there's a few different approaches to extraordinary costs. You can set aside a contingency reserve, so if something like that comes up, the board has a pool to draw on to be able to add to a budget that needs it. When you look at average costs over time, you usually have something that has come up almost every year that'll factor into it.
Okay.
So there's a law of averages that kind of plays in your favor for that kind of thing. But, you know, for the jail, it's not necessarily population as much as posts, because you can have 1 guy or 100 guys in a post and need exactly the same number of FTEs. So figuring out what those drivers are is part of what takes a while. And again, we don't have those for all of our activities at this time. So zero-based is not, I don't think it's a viable option. You could kill your budget staff and all of us would quit before the next year started if you asked us to do this. So the other options on this page are some reduction options. If you didn't want to fool around with all this because we know we're going to cut the budget, you could just go directly to budget cuts and make the whole thing really simple. You could do an across-the-board cut. When we looked at the chart, I've shown you 4 different ways to do across-the-board. So you could select one of those. It could be a percentage, it could be a flat dollar amount like the target option above. Just tell each office and department, here's what you have to spend, and be done with it. You could implement a freeze. There's 2 different variations on a freeze. One is freeze what they get in 2018, and they have to absorb any changes in maintenance level or COLA or medical inflation or anything else that comes up. They would just have to absorb it. And a freeze plus is have some or all of maintenance level absorbed. In a freeze budget, you would not allow any, well, one option is you would not allow any budget amendments during the year that don't come with supporting revenue. And just make that just flat out plain right off the bat so people know what the rules are, right, as we go in. So those are currently the options. I think that the most viable ones are target-based, priority-based, or any of the budget reductions.
Yep. What you got? Looking at zero-based, it says the challenge is no activities are assumed to be untouchable. Isn't that true for all of them then, whether it be a priority or a target-based? Nothing's untouchable?
I think that if the board, so when we did the priority-based, one of the things that the board set as a criteria was that if it's a mandatory program,
Right, mandatory service,
that
yep.
would end us up in a lawsuit or some other unfavorable position for the county if the officer department didn't do it, that those could not be eliminated. But in a zero-based budget, if theoretically, the way zero-based works is if you can't justify your cost, it's not going to be funded and you're not going to do it. So even things that are considered mandates would not be necessarily automatically funded. And you may recall when we talked in treatment sales tax that I would take the the treatment courts off the table and say, we're going to pay for these no matter what.
Vividly, I remember that.
Well, there's an assumption in budgets, I think it's partially a myth, that certain things will always be paid for at whatever amount they happen to cost. I think that's a myth, but zero-based makes that explicit that that is absolutely not the case.
All right.
I guess, can I, so, I don't know why you keep going back to the jail, because that was a headache. But, so we need to have, rent out bed space from other jurisdictions, but we don't have money to do it. But maybe we're in the middle of litigation that says you will do it, you know? So how do you accommodate that then when you have those type of issues that come up? You just make adjustments?
Part of the direction from the board in any of these methods can be the board's prerogative to take certain issues and go ahead and fund them. So the contract bids is an excellent example. I would move those out of the general fund to detention sales tax. That's part of the conversation we've been having.
Let's do that.
Or the 5 FTEs that you're currently considering for the jail.
That's where I'm
Let's
going.
fund those out of detention sales tax and have this process focus on general fund.
And that, takes pressure off of the general fund.
It does.
That, right?
On the flip side, though, when the board does something special for one entity, you will get criticism from the other elected officials saying that you're favoring one office, you're not taking care of their needs, that they have equally important needs. There's a slippery slope, so I would suggest to you that I think that we need to, my personal opinion, is that we need to address the issues at the jail because we will wind up in a lawsuit and pay more in the long term if we don't.
Right.
If there are issues that the other electeds can take forward that are that clear cut, then you should address those too. But, address only those items that you can show have an absolute negative impact on the county if you don't do them, and have everything else follow whatever process you enact.
Well, just kind of recognizing what you said from other organizations, feeling they're left out, can we also fund, a judge out of that same fund, or a prosecutor out of that same fund, to again take pressure off of the current expense budget?
Yeah, no, not out of the detention sales tax fund.
Because it's part of detention. I mean, it's not actually, you know, it's getting the guy into detention because you have to have the process.
The law is quite
that explicit?
strict, yes.
Okay,
For
I just
for
was
that
wondering.
particular fund, it is that explicit.
Okay, just was
And there
wondering.
really aren't any other funds that we have.
No.
Okay,
Can access them.
okay.
So you're gonna have to make a decision, maybe today, maybe soon, which one of these you want to do, target, incremental, priority, or zero base. And understand what you're making a decision on, especially the priority one. That's the one we did last time. That's the one I'm in favor of. It's consistent. It's a little painful, but it's consistent. But you're at that point. Not today. Is it today we make a decision?
I do need a decision so that we can write the budget instructions.
Well, I lean towards priority based for the exact same reason. Everybody just got done doing that in 2016. Not everybody, but most everybody. So it is consistent. It's understandable. So I opt for the priority base. We've got to fund the very basic funds of government, and then pick and choose.
I have a problem with the priority base. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You're done.
That's fine. Yeah.
Where we come to law and justice, I know it's painful for some to play inside I'll call the goose egg, but if you keep splitting the goose egg for another one to be able to play on their own, and then another one's going to want to play on their own, then we've lost the whole integrity of the priority base. Not you personally, but the system as a whole, and we're back to incremental and incremental with the priority of the others, and that's juxtaposed. It's off balance, or whatever word you want to use, and that's not the direction. So I don't know how to solve that. I would say no more leaving the goose egg, but then you let one leave the goose egg, then you know what I mean by the goose egg, right? Yeah, we had the circles of law and justice, sheriff, coroner, clerk, courts, all that within one circle.
Right.
And let the goose egg.
Okay.
And then general government, and then HR with
the buckets. I call them buckets.
Okay, I call them the eggs, you call them the buckets.
So,
okay.
All right.
So in one, I know the courts didn't like playing so well inside the bucket, so the goose egg, but still, that's how you do business to get business done.
So I had suggested that we split the law and justice into two. Are you suggesting that we do not do that? Because my suggestion was to take the courts and let the courts play.
The courts and the clerk, right?
Yeah, the courts and the clerk.
Sure, that's what they would want, right?
The
but the point is,
I don't think it is what they
I don't
want,
think that's what they want. Maybe
they would want the split.
They would?
Oh,
don't
yes.
want to play with the others.
That's my point.
And they don't,
And now,
I guess that what I'm telling you is they don't want to do this at all. But you can ask them again, and I've taken all possible steps to figure out how to respond to them.
no, hang on a second, because the next step after that is law enforcement is not going to want to play with prosecuting attorney, and prosecuting attorney is not going to play with defense, and then we
That's
fall.
right.
And that's how that's going to go. And
That's the
not-
downside of splitting. Yeah.
So that's the downside of the priority based.
It's the downside of party base if you allow someone to not want to play the budget game, yes.
I remember them saying, and I'll just very generically, I'm not going to bring up any department or names, saying they did not like to have to do that themselves because they viewed that was the job of the commissioners or budget to come up with their budget rather than have them be forced to do it.
So the response to that, they did say that, and the response to that is we didn't ask them to implement their own budget. We asked them as experts to make a recommendation to the board
within their own field,
on
yes.
how and to give the board priorities,
Yeah.
because they really are the law and justice experts. They did resist, but there was nothing illegal about what we were asking them to do.
No.
They also, they claim that too.
Oh,
The
wow.
other thing they said, and what we may very well run up against, is they said that no other county has done this, that they've made it very broad, no other county has done this. So that is one of the things that we researched, we have not found another county who convinced the courts to play.
But that was priority base.
But they did it priority based.
There are other counties that did priority-based budgeting, but the courts, in 2 counties, the courts, as ours did, refused to play. Just totally refused. And then
And what happened?
others, well, they went ahead and enacted a budget, I'm not sure at what level. The courts just didn't get anything new in their budget, much like we had done here 2 years ago.
So they get a budget by default.
Yeah.
Baseline budget.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was a
baseline.
baseline. So you will get the same pushback from the courts.
Well, it's consistent.
I'm just letting you know.
Okay.
I'm willing to go down that road. I'm just kind
Let me get
of
Romero's
making a
thoughts.
preview.
Romero, what do you got?
Yeah, as you may remember, as Robin stated, they were totally against it. Commissioner Blake remembers receiving a letter from the John Tunhat, the prosecuting attorney, on a very extensive letter where they stated it was illegal to go through this priority-based process. Interestingly enough, we engaged Elizabeth Petrich because as a prosecuting attorney from the board, and she disagreed with his opinion, and that's how the commission at that point moved forward on the priority-based budget. Also, remember the priority-based budget last time was a little bit of additional revenue. It was available to those groups.
Yeah, that's true too.
And the ask was not to determine what the prosecutor should be funded versus the courts. It was how the additional funding should be allocated.
But then the
Quite
bucket.
accurate. We did ask them how much each officer department should get.
But also within the context of the constitutional mandates that each of those offices have, I think never was part of that discussion.
Right.
Never was an ask to determine whether the prosecutor, which has a constitutional mandate, should be exposed to the decisions of the courts and vice versa.
Right.
That was a baseline assumption, but somewhere was a little bit of the disconnect in there. We also, as you may remember, we offered to have a facilitator hired to work with the group just to facilitate the conversation, which they declined.
Immediately.
So perhaps I think it will depend on what decision you would like to take in this upcoming biennial, because if you decide to go with a freeze budget, meaning no increases, the same levels of 2018, I think it will beg the question whether a priority-based approach is needed.
Oh, yeah, at that point.
So I think it's when you assess this, whether it's a priority-based budget versus what is the options that you have in terms of budget instructions, those two are related. Because again, if the direction of the board is to have a freeze budget, the same levels of 2002 will come in 2019 and 20, then there's not a need for those groups to get together.
Yeah, done over.
But if you
Already know your
consider a modest reduction, whether it's 1%, 2%, and you saw some of the effects on the budget model, then the priority-based budget approach makes sense, because they will put them in the situation as to how, as a group, they're going to be producing some recommendations to you as a board as to where the reductions will be.
So we could propose a priority base, and then once there's any pushback, say, okay, we're just going to go to the freeze.
Well, you can stick
no.
with one or the other.
But I think it will be prudent for you to be upfront from the beginning.
That's a
What is
line
your
there,
intent?
Our intent's to go priority.
Yes,
That's the intent. But if
right,
there's pushback and arguing and digging in heels, okay, we'll just go to freeze then.
right. But as we did 2 years ago, and again, but we'll recall, we need a fallback plan.
Mm-hmm.
And we had one last year, and we put it right into the budget instructions. If you can't, as a group, come to a unanimous recommendation to the board, then what you'll receive is your maintenance level budget. and
Which
no
is a
more.
freeze budget?
That wasn't a freeze.
If you
No,
can't
that
or
added
won't.
money, but I don't think that we're gonna be able to.
It won't be
We
much.
might be able to afford maintenance this year, but it's gonna be really close. I think we're gonna be in a cut scenario.
Well, how many came together and,
Everybody but Law and Justice managed to get it done,
so, right.
yeah.
I'm just wondering, how does that work out? There's actually a red line there too, and they cross somewhere. So which one gets us to the better point there, you know, kind of extending out?
Depending on where you set the amount that you're willing to spend, all roads lead to financial stability. It's just how you get
Very
there.
politely said.
Wow.
Oh, my God.
That
Was
was
that a, was that
amazing.
a 7
Oh,
degrees
wow.
of
I
separation?
don't even know if I understand that.
From the Book of Robin.
He said which one, so that means pick, so.
I think that as long as we acknowledge that there's going to be a challenge with one of the groups, that, you know, personally, I think priority-based is the best process, because you've got people who know their offices and departments working together to try to get a solution that's good for that, what is essentially that section of our strategic plan. And we're asking these groups to align to our new strategic plan. So how do we advance the strategic plan at the same time as we know that there are the economic reality of less resources out there?
Right.
That's basically what you're asking them. And again, it's a recommendation to the board. If you flat out don't like what they bring forward, or you think that there's a significant fatal flaw in their proposals, at the end of the day, it's up to the board to decide and set the budget. So that is still your prerogative. But I think that a well-run priority-based process is one of the best approaches if we can't go with zero-based, and we just can't. We've also, Romero and I have talked very briefly to Brian at Burke, and they would be willing, for a little additional money, of course, to come and be the facilitators in the budget
Do you know
process.
Brian at Burke is?
So,
It's the one that did the strategic plan here the last couple of days.
right, so that, I think that they've built some trust during the strategic plan process that could carry us forward in the budget process by using them as the facilitators.
I like the idea of priority-based, based on what I said earlier, but also having a plan B, but I would put in there priority-based, but if you can't or refuse to play along, however the wording is, not just can't, but if you refuse or if you're unwilling to, then we will go to a freeze. Because that doesn't, it doesn't take the onus off of us. We still need to approve the budget and such, but it boxes those folks in that don't want to play against those that do want to play. Say, look what you just did. You refused to play, so now we all have to buy into this.
You're talking about going to freeze or how going to maintenance level?
I'm talking about if they don't want to play the priority base, then we go right into the, what's the maintenance level?
I think it'll be a freeze.
It'd be a
plus,
freeze.
because I don't think we can afford maintenance.
Not freeze plus.
We'll see. I'll have maintenance level numbers and be able to report to you in early July.
Maintenance is the freeze plus, yeah?
Yeah, well, up to maintenance level if we can afford
Right.
that much. Other counties, we've discovered some interesting things when we talk to other counties. The first is we're all in this boat of the additional pressure of not having enough revenue. Very few counties are in a good spot. The second is we all seem to do the same things. So the way that I assume reversion, others are doing some variation on that, either a vacancy rate that they calculate or some way. We're all doing an aversion assumption. We're all looking at how do we do the cuts. Many have approached this priority method with the alternative being, if you don't bring us something, then we're just going to decide how much of the cut you get. So I think that anything you choose here, it's not going to be something that someone in the state hasn't done.
Okay.
So we have the minimum amount as far as amending fund balance that we're trying to stay at that
At least
level. Can we use some of that creative funding, you know, whether it be for corrections officers or I mean, you said that the law doesn't allow you to go too far astray, so we definitely can't have a judge or can't have a prosecutor. I mean, I don't know where the line is. Where do you get to where you can take money out of there to try and
So where the line is where you can take that alternative fund, let's talk detention sales tax for a moment, down to the point where it's not sustainable. That's the line. We can shift costs to the other fund until it's broke. So, and what I've shared with you in our budget work sessions is there's about $1 million of capacity in detention sales tax. So where we're able to shift, I have brought to you, here's about how much in these other funds that we could do there instead of the general fund. But most things are in the general fund for a reason. And that reason is that there are no other legal funds available for the activities.
should we be able to pass 2006 in the legislative session next year, then we would have a little more flexibility on that fund.
TST.
Yes.
Well, it's not just TST, it's other funds too.
The bigger and more important part of that bill as far as a county's financial stability for the general fund is the fact that the veterans and the public health part of the property tax don't come out of the general fund share. That does instantly create more revenue that goes into the general fund.
Okay.
And I think we briefly thought that perhaps we'll have about $1.9 million of that particular.
And that little bit
a year.
I asked about Jennifer and asked Romero to talk with Jennifer, it has to do with that, getting that through.
Yeah, and we have highlighted to Jennifer to include that as part of the county's legislative agenda.
Yeah.
But I think you as a commissioners, every time that you have the opportunity to interact with legislators, to continue to bring that as a...
This thing coming up in Yakima has something to do with that. I think that's part of the strategy. Ask her about.
So are you ready to make a decision on one of these four today?
I guess so.
You don't have to, I'm just.
Well, I mean, it looks like we're boxed in. It sounds like we have to me.
I need a decision to be able to write the budget instructions. We
I'll
hand
make
those
sure it
out
gets all
next
this.
week. Yep, I want to answer all of your questions.
How about you?
Priority.
Priority, yeah. But with a default plan.
Well, and the default plan goes down here to the freeze.
You're
is
going to
that-
freeze or maintenance, but depending on how that works out, so.
Depending on how much money's available.
Yeah.
All right.
But do you
What
put
will
the
they-
wording in there, can't or refuse? Or can't or unable to?
It's written in a way that it's a little more.
Just a quick clarification on the priority
It says
days.
If the team does not come to
Do you want
Good
to keep all the law and justice in a single group, or you want to separate
I
between the
thought we were
court?
going to have two.
No, that's what I want to clarify. What is it that you
Yeah,
like to do?
But seem to want just one.
Well, the only reason I'm leaning towards two is because there is that separation of issues where we had the clerk and the courts in one. Screw up.
You can do
there.
that, but then be prepared there's going to be a third split.
as a,
So here's
I think there will be,
here's
yes.
a reason to split them.
As soon as you crack it.
And then the fourth one right after that.
okay,
The
okay.
courts are a separate branch of government.
That might
Well, I
work for
don't
about a
have the
minute.
experience, so I'm
Well,
gonna go.
I mean, it at least gives you a valid reason for
So
doing
I
that
would
one
say
and
if
not
there's
others.
going to be a third split, I'm just gonna go straight to maintenance and freeze and then solve it all that way. I just don't wanna split, resplit, split, and resplit again. I just cannot stand that. It's just driving me
Okay,
crazy.
well, I'm gonna go, because I do not have the experience to really make that decision.
I know you, yeah.
You know.
You just,
So I'm going.
you got
with-
us three really.
I'm going with what you're saying, that's what
So what am I saying?
you're saying.
What are you saying?
Don't split the egg up, is what you're saying, it sounded to me
Don't
like.
break the egg.
I don't like breaking the egg.
Don't wanna
Okay.
break the
And let
egg.
them
I
break,
like those
let
breaking
them,
the egg.
let them break the egg.
So you like breaking the egg? You don't like breaking the egg?
Well,
What is
because they're
your?
a separate branch of government, that justifies putting them separately.
That is about the only valid reason I could see that you could stand on and not allow the other ones to split off.
Okay, so I'm gonna go with Bud.
Don't break the egg.
So let's keep the egg whole.
If it breaks, you can still handle it. That's my point. I don't want to go straight to the break.
Okay.
You know, within them, and I told you this 2
See what
years
I'm saying?
ago,
I'll make them
within
break.
them, what they could easily do is say, okay,
I'm-
I have this percentage of the egg now, and I'm gonna have this percentage of the egg when we're done. They could do it that easily. I mean.
Yeah, they
I'm
could,
going
yeah.
to stay with consistency is what I want.
All right.
And
Okay,
then
then.
see where we need to adjust.
So I just need 10 seconds.
Okay.
10 seconds.
We're gonna wrap
We,
this up.
we,
Thank you.
shifting gears, we had a request from Lewis County to submit a letter of support for the larger transportation study they have down in Lewis County. They connect to TransAlta.
That's the NLCI.
Yeah, is a TransAlta. I think the letter of support is good, and I think we should support that effort.
should.
However, they're also asking to participate with $5,000 as a match to the project.
And the letter is free.
Yeah, my suggestion will be not to participate with 5,000. I can give you a little bit of history, because when we initiated this process, we argued that perhaps this is going to be a regional project, and to include Thurston County as part of some of the key stakeholders. They refused to do that. So they're moving solo now. They're coming back to Thurston County for support. So my suggestion will be, and I'll respond back to send, we'll be more than happy to
Letter, no money.
a letter, but no money. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I got to run.
Hey, we have a ribbon cutting or something to go to.
Food bank over in Lacey, is that it?
Yeah.
So we'll bring this to another discussion.
Is that gonna be 12:30?
Budget break.
You're gonna be there at noon?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what you guys are gonna do, you flying?